What up? It's your boy, Nick Incredible Man, and yes, I am back at it again. And this is New Amsterdam Season 4, Episode 3, discussion slash review, same as it ever was. And I'm going to be 100%. They played with my emotions a little bit this episode, and it upset me. Let's talk about it, man.
Yo, fight until you make it, yo, don't think it, no, just take it. Don't wait for someone to break it, take control, then don't just take it. Hey, you can make it happen, you just gotta take some action. Take the ship and be the captain.
First of all, there was a lot of things happening in this episode. I actually had to take and write down a couple extra notes along with everything that I normally talk about because, you know, that like there was some extra stuff going into this episode. First of all, we see the person that Karen called on the phone last week happens to be Veronica. Now, it seems like her and Max has a history, and it's not like a good history either. You know, Max seems like she's the devil incarnate, you know, so there's definitely something there. But throughout the entire episode, we see her sprinkling her little seeds of whatever it is, you know, this the catch with her, whatever she's sprinkling across all over the place. In every section, she went to Bloom, she went to Iggy, she started doing it with Reynolds, and she went to Sharp. Now, what's messing me up about all of this is because it seems like Karen is doing this intentionally. She's doing this to hopefully get Max to stay at New Amsterdam. I don't know. I feel like that's her end goal. That's what she wants, because we see how Max is looking at this Veronica lady, and it's not a good look. But also throughout this episode, we see how Max and Sharp leaving is kind of putting a damper on everybody else. Sure, they're happy that they're together and they're in a relationship, but it's putting a damper on everybody else. And I know that, you know, you shouldn't have your relationship and your life, you know, just be strictly for other people. You know, it's for yourself. But Sharp and Max both made an impact in all of these people's lives and in New Amsterdam. And for them to just up and leave, you know, that's heartbreaking to us, the viewers, and for the people themselves as well. You know, it's just hard all around, man. And it's a little upsetting because I don't want them to leave. And like you guys told me, you know, like they're not leaving the show. It's just that, you know, they're setting all this up, you know, this whole transition that's going on. So I get that, but it's just, I just can't wrap my head around it. And, you know, it seems like no one else can either. But also, while we're dealing with this episode, we see that Sharp is having some problems with Max, with the clutter. I think that's the appropriate word. We see that, you know, she's having a problem with all the clutter that Max has, his apartment being too small, and just nitpicking on itty bitty things that, you know, are probably pet peeves, but she's nitpicking on all of those. It's like she's trying to find fault within the relationship so she doesn't actually have to commit and move forward, because we know Sharp has a thing with relationships. You know, she had a couple boyfriends in the past, and it just doesn't work out with her and boyfriends. You know, I don't know what it is with Sharp. It seems like she kind of quits it before it could even get to that certain point. You know what I'm saying? And her and Max has had this will they won't they thing since season 1. They finally took the initiative the end of last season and this season, to really take that step. And now they're in a fully committed relationship, and Sharp is trying to break it off already. And she ends up talking to Karen, and Karen is saying all of this stuff that, like, if you're nitpicking this early on in your relationship, you know, that's a red flag. That's a problem or something. And throughout this entire episode, while Sharp is dealing with her stuff, we see that Max is, you know, judging a science fair, and this kid, I had to write her name down, Imani Moore, comes up with this wonderful idea of turnip sutures and everything for, you know, for the world, to make the world a better place, to help countries that can't really afford the higher end sutures. So that's great. That's a wonderful idea. And Max is one of those people, sure, he jumped the gun in the entire situation dealing with that. And that entire situation about her turnip and all of that, and dealing with the big pharmaceutical company and everything, he jumped the gun. But that's simply Max fashion. You know, he always jumps the gun regardless of any situation, especially when it's for the better good. But he jumped the gun, and the girl had a wonderful idea. But because he picked her for the competition and she ended up winning, she got the $50,000, but her idea was patented to the company. Like the company took her idea, and then Max tried to get her to sell it and, use it, and then the company wasn't buying it. They were going to shelve it because there's money to be made in the product and it can help a lot of people, but there's money to be made in the higher end, high tech suture. So why would they give up more money for less money? Pharmaceutical companies and big business, and this is the stuff that they do all the time. The only thing that upset me the most is that this girl would sign a contract without reading the fine print. I mean, I don't know who does that. I mean, sure, she's a kid, but, and then the whole ordeal when she was talking to her father and everything, she's like, well, I'm 18, I can do the da-da-da-da-da. But you never sign a contract without reading the fine print. And I was wondering why they never mentioned that throughout the entire episode until finally towards the end when they decided to not fight them and take them to court and everything. And Max brought up the contract with the lawyers and everything like that. So, like, it took a while for them to bring it up, but I was wondering about that the entire time. Like, why is nobody mentioning the contract? Because if she signed this over, there's nothing they could really do. Sure, big business and big pharma and everything, all they care about is profit margin. But everybody's not like that, and we see later on in the episode, Max introduces her to someone else that could help her and help her develop it and start a business out of it and everything. So that was nice for her, and she got a full ride to college. You can't beat that. Max ended up helping her in the end, but that whole ordeal, it made Max feel like, he was himself again, because, he had to change himself a little bit while being in a relationship with Helen. And that's what a relationship is. It's give and take, it's compromise, and it's, sometimes you got to just let some of the water fall off your back like a duck. Just a little bit. But we see that both of them are kind of dealing with some things, and to me, like in this episode, it felt like Max really didn't want to go. Like he wanted to stay if he could, but he had already committed to Helen, and he's not one of those people to just go back on his word. But both of them were having doubts, and I feel like outside of the relationship, so like when they came together this entire episode at the end when Sharp was talking to Max and telling him all this stuff about the toothpaste cap and the small apartment and everything like that, I felt like she was hinting at something, but then the whole show just messed with my emotions. The entire episode made me feel like something was going to happen, and it didn't happen. It built up to the point to where she was like, I think we should move in together. I'm not saying that I'm not happy. You guys know I love Sharpwin for the win, but it's just the episode messed with my emotions, and I don't like being tricked. But we're also dealing with this episode with, I had to write her name down too, I think Wandy, Iggy's resident. And what I love about that whole dynamic is what she said to Iggy was valid, and what Iggy said to her was kind of valid, because Iggy always let every patient get under his skin, and that's why he's not seeing patients anymore. You know what I'm saying? So with Wandy, her not wanting to let the death of a patient kind of affect her, or her, really just let it inside of her and kind of just keep it off and close that inside of her, was valid, because she can't help other patients if she's focusing on that. But like Iggy said, it was something that she needed to feel, because let's be 100%, if you lose a patient and you don't process that, eventually it's going to come back to bite you in the end. Or like whether it's a patient or if you lose somebody, if you don't ever completely deal with that grief, it's definitely going to come back to bite you whenever you least expect it. And she really can't have that happening to her. So it's better to deal with it up front. And their whole entire situation, I felt like Iggy was right part way, and Wandy was right a little bit as well, because, Iggy's not seeing patients, but that's because he let every patient get under his skin and connect. That's what made him good. But, now he's dealing with some other stuff. Floyd. Every week I talk about Floyd, and it upsets me because, he's still doing this whole thing. But I'm going to be 100%. This week I felt a little sorry for Floyd. He's hallucinating. He's going through some trauma because he's constantly having to deal with gunshots, and ended up being one of the people that he knows from the supermarket right around the corner and stuff. So, like, it's affecting him. This entire episode, Floyd was hallucinating. It really messed him up. But the fact that him and Lynn, you guys know how I feel about the relationship. But the fact that she saw that he was hurting and upset and a little just messed up and traumatized. And tonight, well, not tonight, but that night wasn't his night. It was her night to spend it with her actual husband. But she decided to change that and spend the night with Floyd when he was hurting. I don't want to give her an applause because it upsets me. This whole relationship just upsets me because they mess my boy Floyd up a lot, and it just really upsets me. But for her to acknowledge the fact that Floyd is going through something and she wants to be there to help him, I have to give her a round of applause for that within itself. So it's short. It's not gonna be long. It was short. The Bloom stuff, man. The Bloom stuff with Layla was fantastic. Now, I felt like Bloom really shouldn't have intervened with Layla dealing with all this stuff and letting the other resident kind of take charge and lead everything. But I kind of like the initiative that she took. You know, she kind of put it out there and let Layla know that, you know, hey, you are better than the other residents. You know, you're a former doctor, so own it, step into it. And in the end, Layla did. And I'm going to be 100%. She stepped into it so good to Bloom was almost actually kind of legit upset with her because when she was trying to do the whole, what was it? Was it trach? Was it a trach? No, it wasn't a trach, was it? Anyway, the procedure where she stuck him in the neck and she had to pull it out and everything. So that whole moment when she was doing that, she was like, oh, no. I've worked plenty of cases where we had to do it in the dark and under gunfire and what's the things that explode? That's not bombs. It's like, anyway, mortars. So under mortar fire and all that other type of stuff with no electricity, she was like, so I could do this blindfolded if I had to. So she came in there, done it all smooth like and made it look all legit. And I was like, okay, I see you, Layla. So big ups to Layla this episode because she didn't have to do it, but Bloom talked her into it and she really acknowledged that and then she kind of made it her own. And I really loved that. Overall, the episode was good. The only thing I didn't like is because it tried to trick me, if you will, and I don't like being tricked. And then we have, you know, the whole thing with Veronica going around to every everybody that's in our little clique, put it like that. Everybody that's in our little clique and in every section that they're ahead of, we had her going to all of those, telling them, oh, I'm the, you know, do this, and oh, you must be so and so and so, and she never mentioned her name the entire episode, and that upset me too. You know, she's walking around this entire time talking and going everything, and she never said her name. Say her name already, but they tried to build the anticipation towards the end, and then boom, bam, Karen says her name, and Max knows her, and then they have a history, and Max was like, she's the worst person for New Amsterdam, and I feel like she probably is, because she's probably going to cut some stuff and just ruin everything. Oh my gosh, this episode, it was good in moments, in parts and scenes and everything, but I don't like being tricked. I don't know how you guys felt, but I don't like being played, and they played with me with Sharpwin. So this is your boy Dick Incredible, man. Don't forget to smash the like button so you can smash it anymore. Comment down below, and I'll be sure to respond to each and every one of them and subscribe, but only if you really want to, man. Peace out.